Welcome to Planet Elevate AI, the podcast where we explore how artificial intelligence is transforming industries, one insight at a time. I'm your host, Imran Kadri. Today's episode is especially exciting. We're diving into the fascinating intersection of artificial intelligence and the world of visual presentation, from architecture to design and everything in between. Joining us is someone who bridges the creative and the technical with real finesse. David Alpert, the CEO and co-founder of Geopogo. David brings a unique combination of award-winning architectural expertise and deep business acumen, where he's channeled into leading a cutting-edge 3D technology team at Geopogo. Their work is revolutionizing how we visualize, collaborate on, and present projects before a single brick is laid. From high-rises to hospitals, and now to VR, AR, and AI-driven platforms. David's journey is one of constant innovation. Welcome, David, to the podcast.
Thank you so much. I'm very happy to be here. Thank you for inviting me.
Thank you so much, Dave. It's been a real pleasure to have you on the show. For those who might not know yet, could you give our listeners a quick introduction to your background and the journey that led you to launch Geopogo?
Okay. Well, like many people who have pursued architecture as a career, for me, it was like an obsession as a kid. Talk about the deepest passion for something to do. And so I've spent my career enjoying doing what I love. And eventually I had a dream, and that led me into technology and the creation of products for other people to be more creative. And that's where I am today with Geopogo, thanks to my team. I should say off the bat, I'm a non-technical founder. I'm only as technical as architects are. I'm not as technical as a computer scientist.
That's interesting. So tell us a bit more about the vision behind Geopogo.
Yeah. Okay. So the vision behind Geopogo has very much to do with a broader vision of a digital twin of the real world. And some people would call that a real world metaverse. But when I had the inspiration for this 10 years ago, I didn't know anything about metaverse. I'd never even heard of the word. And it was just an idea that was inspired actually by Google Street View, and how fascinated I was that I could see a view of a street, for instance, a view where my daughter was living in Madrid. And wow, how is this possible? How have people like captured this imagery? But then immediately, because, I like my boundaries are very broad, I wanted to go inside, and I wanted to go above, and I wanted to go around. And I was so frustrated that, there were these station points in the street, and I could only look at it from there. And so my dream was to make a fully navigable world, a model of the real world, and to start doing things in this model that informed better decision making for the real world. But since you can make your decisions in the virtual world, then you can experiment more with things. And that's how you end up with a better informed solution.
Fascinating stuff. Thank you so much. They're a really good opening into Geopogo. I'm sure we'll come back to Geopogo as the show progresses. So what was the turning point when you realized technology, especially AI and augmented reality and virtual reality, could be a transformative force in design?
Okay, well, they came in sequence. Of course, virtual reality came first. And virtual reality, as you probably know, just basically is you are isolated in a space that is separate from where you really are. You can't see where you really are. And that way you can imagine you're on the beach in Tahiti or something, which is very cool. Then came augmented reality. And augmented reality is what the design and construction world needs, because it allows you to see what you're really seeing, like through a pair of eyeglasses. But in addition to what you're seeing through your eyeglasses, you're seeing a layer of digital information, which is somehow coordinated with what you're really seeing. And that has everything to do with design and construction, because design and construction is always happening in the real context of the real world. And so you need to see what's really surrounding the design, whether you're renovating the interior of a flat or whether you're building a new building on a site and it needs to relate to the rest of the city. So augmented reality was cool. And then came artificial intelligence. And artificial intelligence, if you will, is sort of like an extension of the type of computational ability we already had. I mean, a search engine was an amazing computational innovation. And the artificial intelligence takes it way farther, but it's still on that continuum. if you look at it that way. So I can talk more later about what it is that we do with artificial intelligence and how that really, really expands options and possibilities.
Thank you so much. It looks like all three work in tandem at Geopogo, which
Yeah,
is
they do. They
remarkable.
do really focus on augmented reality more than virtual reality. Because the virtual
Okay,
reality doesn't bring in the context of what's really there. So,
sure.
for instance, if you were going to put a building into a model of the real world, somehow you would have to capture all of that, as opposed to with augmented reality, all you have to do is place your design on the site, inside or outside, and then you can see the site. You don't have to recreate the site. The site's there because you're there.
Brilliant. Okay, so we've got a question coming through, which is about your leadership. So if you can just give us an idea on what you've done to lead a tech-forward company like Geopogo.
Sure, that's a wonderful question. And actually, that goes back to the kind of architect I am. And that goes back to where I studied. I studied at UC Berkeley, and
Okay,
UC Berkeley is on the forefront often in all kinds of different fields. And when I studied, there was a focus on what's called user needs. So, user needs puts the focus on how is the project really going to serve the people who are going to live there or work there, or if it's building that has some kind of public significance, what it's going to do for the community as a whole. That doesn't exclude the consideration of how it performs for sustainability or how it looks in terms of aesthetics. It's just a focus. So why is this focus important? The focus is important because it's often overlooked in architecture. One of the things that I guess inspires and leads people to devote themselves to architecture is the ego, the creative ego. And the creative ego can get in the way of actually thinking and devoting yourself to how this project is going to serve other people. And so it's a great thing that people have the creative ego, but it can be counterproductive in terms of a finished product that's going to serve somebody. Okay, what does that have to do with my leadership stuff and what's important to me? Well, what's important to me always is the people. So, as an architect, although I was a little uncomfortable in stages, I was gradually promoted to leading teams from smaller teams to bigger teams because I was focused on the people. That included the client. It's important to have somebody people focused working with the client, but also my team members, which extended to my consultants like the engineers or the landscape architects, and also to the team that was building it. So very, very collaborative. And that's my joy in architecture is bringing everybody together because you can have a wonderful idea, but in order to make that idea a reality, you have to get everyone's ownership and ideally everybody's input. Now, there are some architects I talk to who go, the last thing I would ever want is for my clients to know what I'm designing. That sounds hilarious, but people feel like clients get in the way. And I would compare that to the practice of medicine. It used to be that medicine was not very transparent to the patient. The doctor knew best, and the doctor would decide what you needed to know and what would be better for you not to know. I mean, now that seems kind of unimaginable because people are encouraged to be partners in their healthcare. It's your health after all. So apply that to architecture. The architect often, unfortunately, feels like they're the ones who know best and they don't want the client interfering in their design process. So Geopogo is largely about making designs more transparent because the people who are stakeholders in the design can see what the design is going to be before it's built. And that's when they can raise their hand and say, hey, that's not exactly what's going to work for me. And I can tell you some fascinating stories about that. But obviously, it's better if they can raise their hand before it's built than if it happens while it's under construction or after it's built. And that's what leads to the 10% of construction effort that goes to waste because
Mm,
somebody sees it in process and says, no, we need to change that. Okay, so my leadership style is to engage people and to empower them. I was looking at a series of leadership styles this morning. I was getting information about stuff like this. And they had 9 different leadership styles. And I kept saying, yeah, I checked that box. I checked that box. I'm like this. I'm like that. There were very autocratic leader is about the only one I wasn't. So that's how you make something happen. When I first started Geopogo, I was like so excited about the idea. That was the creative ego stage. And it was my idea. And I wanted to make it happen. And very quickly somebody advised me, he said, no, I want you to come back to me after you have a team of people working with you who also believe in your idea. And the funny thing is, then it's not your idea anymore. It becomes our idea. And until it's our idea, then it's really not so likely to happen.
Yeah, fascinating stuff, really inspiring. It is. So I think what you've explained there, what you've articulated is that you've got a very unique leadership style,
Mhm.
which is really suitable for delivering the technology and the product, the final product, and the outcomes that you want with your end user. You mentioned about collaborative working, not just producing something that you've thought about, but something that is, that represents the work of your stakeholders, your team, but also the end user as well. So this is really good stuff, really, really good. And I guess there's a point to make, isn't there, Dave, about certain leadership styles when you are a CEO or a founder of an organization, on what the leadership style should be to adopt AI technology in the first place. So if you can tell us a bit more about what you think are those leadership styles and behaviors and values that are very important.
Okay, so that's such an interesting question because, like, for the autocratic leadership style, I mean, they gave examples of people who had each one of these styles. And the autocratic leader example they gave was Steve Jobs. And who can argue with the statement that Apple's been very successful? And so there's obviously a place for that. But I don't necessarily see that a particular type of technology like augmented reality or artificial intelligence calls for one leadership style or another. I think the the right person can make whatever leadership style they have work. But I feel like people are happier when and more invested when they can have some ownership in it, and that ownership includes being self-directed and feeling like their ideas matter. That if they have an idea, the best thing to do is to raise their hand and say, I have an idea, and that other people will listen to them. You can't be too afraid of people doing something that's not perfect or maybe not as good as you would do. The fact is, they're doing it. I mean, everything I talk about, I have stories. Now, you mentioned that your son, I think it's your middle child, was into football.
That's right. Yeah, soccer you call it in America, but yeah, football in the UK. Yes.
Exactly. So, okay. So I was a coach. I was a football coach
Wow. Okay.
for kids, although I'd never played myself as an adult. So, I mean, of course, they were at a young level. So we're not talking about expert football here, but we are talking about something that many, many children engage in. And if you take it, it's an example of anything that you might engage in your life. So, what I had experience watching my older daughter's teams, and this is going to sound obvious, is that the better players got more time on the field and that the players who weren't as good were on the sidelines more. So I had an idea. Okay, why does it have to be this way? Why can't you give everybody equal time? They go, oh my God, you're going to lose all your games. So I just made a practice of doing that. And not only did I give everybody equal time, I gave everybody the choice of what position they were going to play. Now, people are amazing. You have to give them credit. And the kids chose positions that they felt were appropriate to their skills, although they had the opportunity to try anything that they wanted. And what happened was we won every game. Okay, now this is just one team. I'm not saying you could do this with any team, but everybody was so invested in what they did. And instead of focusing on giving the better players the playing time, I helped to elevate everybody to be a good player. And that's the way I think that businesses are best led. Help everybody to be the best.
Yeah. Yeah. So it sounds like giving a platform for people to perform, for people to thrive and do their best. Absolutely.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay. Again, very inspiring indeed. Let's move across to some other questions that we've got here lined up for you.
Okay.
We've got a theme of collaborative working, collaboration here. So how does Geopogo incorporate AI into its 3D design and collaboration tools. Could you give us a peek under the hood, if that's okay?
Sure.
Some insight into what
Sure.
goes on. Yeah.
Okay. So we're talking about something which is very creative. You're doing designs. Okay. So what would be the boundaries to creativity? How can we remove those boundaries? Well, AI allows you to really expand your imagination, and you're giving it prompts and you're responding to what you're seeing. And you can save each one of those iterations. And that way you can experiment more. And experimentation leads to better solutions. I guess that's the basic way I would put it. Now, you might be experimenting with like the content of the design, but you also might be experimenting with the presentation of the design. So to just focus on the presentation, you might want to experiment with different points of view. You might want to experiment with, around the block, or you might want to experiment with going up into the air and getting an aerial view. You might want to see it every different way. So you give commands that way. How about the time of day? Obviously, you want real lighting conditions and you want them at different times of the year. You can do all of that.
Wow.
It's just opening up. So it's a huge opening up of things. And it's very funny in a way to think that, I mean, I know there's OpenAI and Anthropic, but I think that regardless of people's value system, you have to say that OpenAI, is and was at the forefront of artificial intelligence. As a matter of fact, Anthropic is just a spinoff of OpenAI. So think about that. The name of it is open. It is opening up options, opportunities,
New possibilities.
information.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's wonderful, wonderful in that sense. I think
Wow.
the consequences of AI for people's work and the consequences of AI for things like, can obviously be used in nefarious ways. Those are concerning. But as a technology, it is fantastic and amazing.
Brilliant, really good. And I guess that leads us on to nicely to talk about maybe an example of a project that has been successful with Geopogo. So I don't know whether you can share and maybe point us to some design work or some architectural work or
Sure.
buildings or
Oh,
yeah,
yeah. No,
that'd be really
I
good.
love to give examples. So I'll give one here. Okay. So this is before AI. It has nothing to do with AI, but it's everything to do with augmented reality. So just as a reminder, augmented reality, you're seeing what's in front of you, plus you're seeing a layer of information. And in design and construction, that layer of information is typically the proposed design. So you're seeing the proposed design as a direct overlay on top of the existing conditions. It's easy to imagine that as a 2D image, but as 3D, you're actually in the space, you're looking around, and you're seeing everything as it would really be. So this particular story is about a project for a prominent client, Meta, and this was a technical facility for them that was essential to their operations. They had reviewed all of the drawings and signed off on all the drawings. That's typical. People still do that. They're still signing off on
Yes.
2D drawings. They had not experienced it in 3D. Before they started construction, they just said, hey, let's look at this in 3D. I mean, we're a 3D company. After all, Meta, once the users got into the glasses and started looking at this facility and how things were adjacent or distant and how much space there were between them, how it was arranged, they realized it wouldn't work. They had approved something that wasn't what they expected or needed. And so we talked with the construction manager for that project after that afternoon of the client walking around and noting everything that needed to be fixed before construction. And we asked the construction manager, how much did you save today? And they give us a dollar figure. A quarter before, 10% of construction costs are wasted. That was 10% of the cost of fitting out this facility. That's amazing. What if you could do that with every project? I mean, you have to imagine the people from Meta who were looking at the drawings, they weren't dumb. They were doing their best. And the designer was doing their best to try and explain it. But there was a disconnect, okay? That people who needed to work there weren't understanding what the designer had designed. And with AR, it came together and then they solved their problems before the problems arose.
Wow, it seems like a really good case study there. Thank you so much, Dave, for sharing that one. How do you see the role of AI evolving in client communications and marketing strategies for industries that rely heavily on spatial visualization, like real estate or urban planning?
Oh, that's such an interesting question. So, well, think about marketing and real estate. So I'm trying to put myself into that. I worked in a lot of different contexts as an architect. And one of the contexts I worked in was what's called tenant improvements. It's the interior modifications you make, especially in an office building, in order to make it suit the tenant. So we would sometimes have gutted spaces, like a floor in high rise with no walls in it or something. And the broker who was trying to lease the space out would have to walk prospective tenants in it and kind of wave their arms around, going, well, this could be your conference room or whatever. The tenants couldn't visualize it. Very, very hard. And I would say, especially if it hadn't been gutted. So you're talking about an office maybe that has a bunch of walls and they're trying to describe how it would be an open space. Really, really hard. So with artificial intelligence, you can ask, you can prompt for whatever you want, and that can be presented as an option. So automatically it bridges that gap in imagination, if you will, so that people can see it as a real solution.
Okay, wow, really good. Thank you so much there. We're going into the segment where we've got some quick fire wrap-up questions, fun questions. I hope you're ready for these.
Yes.
So let's go. If you could instantly learn one futuristic technology, and it can't be augmented reality, it can't be AI, it can't be VR, what would it be?
Well, I've always been interested in going into the future. And I'm not saying that's a technology that exists now, but AI is getting us closer to that. I used to, like as a kid, imagine teleportation and how would that work? And I actually imagined, okay, I knew my body was made up of somehow little things. You know, I wasn't advanced enough to think of them as being cells or whatever. But your body's made up of little things. So how would it be that you would be teleported? I imagined all these things would be kind of disassembled and then reassembled someplace else. You'd be dematerialized and then rematerialized. And I was so afraid that something would go wrong between the dematerialization and the rematerialization. So, okay, so fast forward to today, I feel like uh, computer graphics gives us a kind of a teleportation to take you somewhere else. And I'll give you an example of it. So I described augmented reality, and I think it's fairly easy to imagine that you could have a 3D virtual model around you and you could see it on top of standing on the ground where it's going to be built. But what if you're not there? What if you're sitting in an office somewhere? How can you get a similar kind of experience? So that's what we've developed at Geopogo with a newer product called Geopogo Cities. And Geopogo Cities utilizes the geospatial data which is available in the world now. The satellite views from Google Maps, the geospatial data from Cesium, and then the computer graphics from Epic Games and Unreal Engine ties that all together. And so you're sitting in London and we have a model of London, and you want to put a building down there in London, you can put a building in that model and you can see it on your screen. You don't really have to be there. And you start having the same experience and benefits as augmented reality on site because you can go inside your model, you can look out any window, you can go any place in the city and see the way that your building would look. And this can solve a lot of issues about like blocking views or casting shadows or anything like that. So that's a form of teleportation. You're being taken someplace and it's for a real practical purpose. And it's also taking you into the future because you're experiencing something which doesn't yet exist today. Well, to go back to your question about technology, I would like to be able to go into the future. I would like to be able to take into account everything that we know about patterns and how things evolve and grow and to project. And people have been making, heroic efforts at this for ages.
Yes, they have.
Now you could have a new tool in order to do that in like a more confident way, because the future could be all kinds of different things. Well, what is the future most likely to be? And make decisions based on that.
Absolutely. It sounds like inspiration from 80s cartoons or Marvel, but yes, I can see where you're coming from there, and teleporting, absolutely. We used to look at that on TV and wonder, how was that possible? But you're right. I think we're getting closer.
Yeah, we are. We're getting closer.
Yeah, getting closer, which is good. So what's one building, Dave, past or present, you wish you had designed?
Oh, I wish that I had designed?
Yes.
Okay. Well, it's not a building. It's a
Okay.
cityscape. And
Okay.
there's a very famous architect, planner. His name is Gordon Cullen, and he's British, of course. And he wrote this book called Townscape. And what Townscape does is it goes back to what's your experience as somebody navigating a town and living in that town. And what is it that adds to your experience? What are the vistas that guide you through that town? What are the landmarks that you see and that you orient yourself to? What is the scale that makes you feel comfortable? So to me, it's not a building. It's a process and a mindset.
Wow. Really interesting stuff there. Okay, so last questions about creativity.
Okay.
Coffee fueled, brainstorming, or quiet solo sketching? What sparks your best ideas?
Ooh, sketching. Definitely.
Sketching.
I'm such a visual person. My pen guides me. My pen gives me ideas that I couldn't have imagined.
Wow, excellent. And in a world where we live with digital technology, with laptops, iPads, tablets, the pen for
Exactly.
you is
Now everybody has a pen.
yeah.
That's the way I
Yeah.
like it. Democratizing things.
Okay, that's really good. Thank you so much for those responses. They're so interesting. And I think you probably need a follow-up podcast at some point to really probe into some of the themes that you've picked out there, especially about teleporting. I am interested as well. Okay, David, thank you so much for joining us today. Your insights into the future of AI-driven visual storytelling and immersive design have been eye-opening for our listeners, whether you're in architecture, tech, or business development. There's a lot to learn from how companies like Geopogo are blending creativity and computation. If the audience want to find a bit more about Geopogo, where do they go, David?
We have a website.
Yes.
And it's Geopogo. That's very good.
Perfect.
But we also have a lot of amazing videos on YouTube. If you just search for YouTube Geopogo, and it could occupy you for a long time and hopefully inspire you to do wonderful things.
Okay, so I did plan to watch Netflix over the weekend, but I've got a better offer now, Geopogo. I'll be watching Geopogo on YouTube. There you go.
Oh, there you go. Yeah.
Thank you, Dave.
Okay,
so,
thank you.
Audience, thank you. Stay tuned for more conversations on how AI is reshaping the world around us. Thank you so much, David, for coming to the show today. Until next time, I'm Imran Kadri, and this is Planet Elevate AI, elevating your business to success. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. It was great. Okay, so sometimes people ask me, well, I have this feather in my hat. And in fact, I have other feathers too. Like this feather is from a rock dove, and this feather is from a blue jay. Look at how beautiful and blue it is. Anyway, this feather happens to be from a crow. And why do I put it in my cap? Well, some of it has to do with opportunity, because I'm going to show you. And you probably know this already, that the baseball cap has little holes in it around the top. There's a hole right here, and obviously the feather is sticking in the hole. So that's a perfect opportunity to put a feather in your hat. And we are surrounded by nature, and we can take a little bit of nature with us here. And that little bit of nature is something that creates delight in other people's lives as we interact with them. And they will let you know that they're delighted about it. They go, I love that feather in your cap. They go, what kind of a feather is that? Or tell me the story about that feather, or whatever. You're engaging with people.